When the ugly truth about cigarettes began to surface in the late 1960s and public campaigns ramped up in the late 1990s, few imagined that smoking would remain such a stubborn force in modern life. Yet here we are, deep into the 21st century, with tobacco giants still thriving, vaping dominating the scene, and e-cigarettes sparking their own storm of controversy. Despite our wealth of information and warnings, smoking persists, clinging to its appeal like a ghost of rebellion. While the damage to lungs and heart often dominates the conversation, there's another, equally sinister side of this habit: the profound ways cigarettes infiltrate and alter the mind. Before diving into the hard science, let's step back and examine the emotional draw of smoking, particularly its grip on the teenage psyche. It often starts in those turbulent adolescent years, a time when rebellion isn't just an impulse, but almost a rite of passage. This phase in human development, where teens push back against authority, is a cornerstone of societal evolution. It's a defiant energy that once propelled humanity from barbaric disputes to more structured ways of coexisting. But when that rebellion isn't allowed a safe, constructive outlet, it can take darker forms, one of which is the quiet, smoldering act of lighting up a cigarette. For some, it begins as a subtle protest against suffocating rules or impossible expectations at home. Maybe it's the child who's constantly compared to a perfect sibling, or the teen navigating life without a present parent, either physically or emotionally. For others, smoking is less about defiance and more about fitting in, a shortcut to camaraderie in peer groups where lighting up is seen as a badge of belonging. And if authority figures in their lives are smokers, the lure becomes even stronger, morphing into a forbidden fruit too tempting to resist. The first hit of a cigarette is rarely about health or long-term consequences. It's about the emotional high, the adrenaline rush of doing something frowned upon, the thrill of secrecy, or the imagined aura of maturity and coolness. The emotional satisfaction often outweighs the logical warnings about future risks. Smokers know the facts. Most could probably recite the dangers listed on the cigarette pack itself. Yet the psychological pull, the way smoking makes them feel, frequently eclipses these warnings. That is until the physical toll starts knocking on the door, usually years down the line. When it comes to understanding smoking's effects, most people focus on the obvious: lungs blackened by tar, hearts laboring under increased strain. What remains less explored is how smoking chips away at the brain's functionality. Recent studies have unveiled unsettling connections between long-term smoking and thinning of the cerebral cortex, the outer layer of the brain, rich in gray matter, responsible for high-level thinking, memory, and personality. This gray matter degradation might seem subtle at first, but accelerates as smoking continues. Over time, smokers face a more rapid thinning of the cerebral cortex than their non-smoking peers. This means a smoker's ability to make sound judgments, learn new skills, and even retain their sense of self can be gradually compromised. Men, in particular, appear more vulnerable to this deterioration than women, though other factors like lifestyle and genetics also come into play. Here's the silver lining: quitting smoking can reverse this damage, though the process is neither quick nor simple. It can take decades, sometimes up to 25 years, for the brain to regain its full functionality, depending on how long and how heavily someone smoked. The sooner one quits, the better the chances of halting further harm and beginning the journey to recovery. The mechanics of addiction reveal even more about smoking's sinister grip. Nicotine, the primary chemical in cigarettes, mimics acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that helps neurons communicate. This mimicry triggers an abnormal flood of dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical, reinforcing the cycle of dependency. Over time, the brain reduces its natural production of dopamine and even cuts back on acetylcholine receptors to compensate for the overload. This is why smokers often find themselves needing more and more nicotine to achieve the same fleeting sense of satisfaction. This biochemical manipulation creates deeply ingrained neural pathways, linking smoking with moments of pleasure, relief, or escape. That's why smokers often describe cigarettes as a stress relief tool, even though the habit itself increases long-term anxiety by disrupting the brain's natural balance. It's a vicious loop that's hard to break, especially when the effects on the brain remain hidden for so long. Most smokers will first notice the physical toll of their habit, shortened breath, a racing heart, or the onset of serious illnesses. What they don't realize is how the brain quietly suffers in parallel. Studies have found that smokers are at a significantly higher risk of developing dementia, personality changes, and other neurological conditions due to the thinning of the cerebral cortex. In fact, smokers are 30% more likely to experience dementia than non-smokers. Fortunately, this risk begins to decline once a person quits. As research advances, the extent of smoking's impact on the brain becomes clearer. Beyond the cerebral cortex, smoking has been linked to reduced brain volume in other critical areas, though the full scope of these effects is still under investigation. What's undeniable is that quitting smoking offers a chance to reverse much of this damage. However, the road to recovery often begins with withdrawal, a challenging but necessary step toward normalizing brain chemistry. For those ready to leave this habit behind, support is more accessible than ever. Whether it's through counseling, medication, or community programs, there are countless ways to take that first step toward freedom. And while the journey may not be easy, the rewards are profound, restoring not only your physical health, but the clarity and strength of your mind. So, if you've been debating whether it's time to let go of smoking, consider this your sign. The path ahead might feel steep, but with every day that passes, you'll be reclaiming pieces of yourself that smoking tried to steal. Every step toward quitting is a step toward a healthier, sharper, and freer version of you. The choice is yours, and the time is now.